Oh, well,
Okay,
that's not what I
we're
wanted.
back.
Oh
We're
well.
recording.
We're back, we're
Episode
recording.
number 7, I think, is what we said. And
Yeah, the last one was 6.
for those who are attentive, who might be watching this, yes, we're in the same clothes, because we record two episodes, two topics in the same day back to back. So that's why it looks like we are unkept and we haven't changed clothes because we haven't. So, all right. So Julie, we said we wanted to talk about combat and making fair and balanced, with air quotes on that, fair and balanced combat.
Yeah.
Um, and how we go about doing that, and how we can adjust things in our prep to make it such, and also how to adjust that on the fly. And we've touched upon this before, I think, in direct conversation, like now, as well as in our chat. We've kind of
Hmm.
discussed this a little bit, but we'll take a little time now and discuss it at some greater length or some greater detail. But um, okay, so tell me, earlier we talked about what's going on with Strahd, and
Oh,
how your game's going. And I'll share with you that, as you probably noticed, last week I had one player. I had Artie, and
1v1 D&D!
this week I had 6 players. So I went from nothing to full table.
Oh my god.
So it was it kind of exploded. And
Artie goes, you ever play 1v1 D&D?
so it was nice to have more than just one player, um, especially when you start getting
Heavy stories.
into heavier stuff, right? But and that got me thinking a little bit about how you and I both run our tables. You run a very open table, like open to the public. Finite number of seats, yes, but in essence, anyone can come and play. Yeah, there's an app for it, blah blah blah. But you get in quick enough, you jockey for position. You could have 5 new players next week that you've never seen before.
Theoretically, if I
Right,
advertise
right.
for it. I don't, but
So, and I try to do the
it's pinned
opposite.
on the chat though. That Facebook chat, my my little at Beyond Cards D&D every Friday night, whatever, is like pinned to the top of the chat.
Hmm.
I don't think I did that. I think Biggs did it, which thank you, Biggs. Shout out. But um Biggs is a really nice guy though. Guy that moderates
Yeah,
that
yeah.
Facebook
Oh,
group.
and I've been kind of
Very nice.
promoting it as well, um, in search of players. If someone says, "Oh, I'm looking for this," I say, "Oh, well, we have a 1E and a 5E, running at the same time," just to kind of get the word out for both. But where I'm going with it is that you have a very open style, kind of anyone can kind of come and play, and I try to do the opposite, right? I'd like to have a fixed number of players. These 3, 4, 5 people, same people, week after week after week, and no one else can come and play. Like, this is our group, closed
I
group.
think there's a curve to that.
Well, right, and that's kind of what I'm getting at. I think what I'm learning, what I need to embrace here
You
with
throw the popcorn at the wall and you get the ones that stick.
with in-person play in a public place, I think what I'm learning is that the characters are going to be fixed more so than the players. So
And
that,
that'll be probably easier for 1E because 1E character creation is a little silly. Not silly, it's just different. It's just more specific. It's more personalized. Um, but oh, my camera's having a hard time.
well,
I will move
my
less.
thinking is that if the characters don't change, I can prep the same way week after week after week. Combat encounters, I know what kind of characters are going to be there. Versus some random
Right.
guy showing up and saying, "Here's my character sheet, and look at all these amazing stats that I just made up. Everyone has an 18 on everything." So if I have a fixed number of characters, and then
I love you, Sophia, but
and
Centaur Fighter and Vashnak.
then players will take a seat, and here's your character that you're playing.
When we did that one shot, you handed out just a pile of
A
characters,
pre-gens,
and
right?
everybody got to choose a pre-gen that you have already accepted or already created, so you know it's balanced. I really liked my little halfling rebellious crazy instigator.
Made
I
of little bottom.
enjoyed, yeah, made of Little Bottom. She was great. I did handstands on donkeys. It was my favorite thing ever. Um, So much so that my campaign tonight that I am a player in, I chose a halfling again. So I am a halfling in that campaign too, and I'm an idiot. I'm a level 8 intelligence. I have 0 brains.
Yeah, but
Um,
eight is still on the low average though.
slightly below average. Um, I would just like to play it off that she's kind of grumpy all the time and she's kind of an asshole. And that's what makes her dumb. Kind of an ignorant dumb. Anyway, comma. I really like just sitting down and picking a pre-gen character, and that way, especially for that table that you're running, it's a little easier for you because they're not pre-gen; they're already like characters in an RPG where you like
Right.
pick your
but what I'm
character
thinking of doing is not have well, we have six characters right now, plus two that are charmed. But
indefinitely.
there are six PCs, right? So that's plenty big enough. We don't need more characters.
6 is
So
almost my table.
with six PCs, I'll max out at six players. Excuse me. And like Artie rolled his character, he has his. Ross rolled his character, he has his. And then we have Kerry and Kenna, who have since left us as players, but they had rolled up characters. So there are actually four truly rolled characters
Real.
that were rolled by the players. The other two were pre-gens because someone just popped in for a
Mhm.
day and we said, here's your character sheet for tonight, or take your pick.
Come
And
play.
so that
Love
the party doesn't fluctuate in its size. One week it's six characters, next week it's four, then it's five, then it's four, then it's six. These characters who we don't have players for, the players
can just
left,
become
they
NPCs.
relocated or they were there for one time, the characters remain. So when a new player comes in, I say, here's a character you play, take it or leave it. Here's the character you're playing. We need someone to play this character.
Or even a choice of characters.
Or
Here's
if there's a
a
couple,
character.
right? So if we have six characters and
Yeah,
only four players, well, you get to choose amongst those six or amongst the
yeah.
couple extras. But I think I like that idea better of having fixed characters and the players can fluctuate some versus having fluctuating characters with fluctuating players.
And if they ask why, you can just say, well, for story reasons, we've been playing it for a while. I don't want to change characters. It'll be a little too
Yeah,
silly,
I don't want to be just
you
taking
know?
someone
And
out
if
and
they
dropping
like it,
someone in.
then they play, they play. If they don't like it and
Yep.
they don't play, they don't play.
And really, I only have two pretty consistent players, which is Artie and Ross. And then the other two are kind of still a little whimsical or a little inconsistent. They've only been here for a few times, and maybe over due time we'll see greater consistency with them. But um, until we do, I have six characters and only two consistent players. That means we've got four extra characters that you could essentially choose from
Yeah,
as to who you want
it
to
does.
play.
And that's why I like, usually my argument against your, because you really like the solid table, the locked table, and that's always my argument against a locked table is when life happens and people leave, and then what are you gonna do? That's why I kind of like having the pool, and that way, whoever is next in the pool or who becomes more consistent in the pool and phases the less consistent players out, you get that stickier table. And then maybe maybe I'll solidify it, but maybe this table will stay sticky. But like sadly, and it's nothing against her. Rachel has fallen out. She's hasn't come back for 4 weeks. And I think just life got ahead of her, and she hurt her foot, and everything happened all at once. And I don't know if she's gonna come back or not. And if she does, I would love to see her. If she doesn't, life happens. I'm not gonna be mad. That's the same with Peyton. Peyton's a collegiate student. She's in a pretty high level. I think she's in like sociology or economics or something
I think
like
it's
that.
sociology. Yeah.
Something like that. Because she talks like a lot of political jargon sometimes, and I'm like, but she's a high level like student in college. If college gets too heavy for her and she has to scoot, that's gonna be what it's gonna be. And I do have two younger players now. I have I have a 17 and an 18. And if my little high schoolers are committed and they stay, then they are committed and they stay, and that's just what it is.
Even
Um,
thinking to my two games I run in Discord, while I have a fixed players, that's definitely not open at all. But the characters are fixed as well. So when a player can't make it, we still play and someone plays as that character.
Yeah, I did that with Tiana. Tiana is a very sticky player. She stays around. She comes every time. She comes early, but she had to leave. She had to go on like a vacation or something. And she gave Corey her character sheet. And I was like, "Yo, Keith does that. I Keith will hand somebody else a character sheet." And they're like, "Okay, so you're okay with it?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm completely fine with it. I've been exposed to it before. We can handle it." I said, "You just gotta stay on top of it." And they're like, "Okay, I got you." And I
Yeah.
go, "Okay,
Yeah,
you
because
got
because in a sense, I mean, one character maybe, one character out of eight, but when one player slash character out of four doesn't show up, that's not fair to the other players to well not cancel, but it's also not fair to the party for that character just to be absent, mysteriously absent, right?
this." I
They,
did
they,
that to
they got too
Rachel's
drunk the
character,
night before,
sadly.
they can't make it, they're hungover, whatever. But now your party of four is now a party of three. That's a big dynamic change for the party, right? For their
The
well-being,
smaller
for their
numbers.
safety,
Yeah.
and for the DM to then have to make adjustments on the fly because I didn't know so and so wasn't going to show up tonight. It was a last minute cancellation. I don't have a character sheet. Sorry guys, you're short a character. And what do I do as a DM? Do I just say, well, you guys are screwed because the whole campaign set up for four to six characters, you have three, or do I make that adjustment on the fly?
And that's where CR adjustment comes into play. That's where
Right.
our topic comes into play.
And
Um,
obviously, if I know ahead of time, I can make adjustments ahead of time. But
right. And you can prep ahead of time if it's enough. Doorbell.
yeah, you hear that?
I did hear
Yeah,
that.
hang on.
Dong dong. Hello, we would like to talk about Jesus Christ.
I don't know who it is. I'm not interested. And it doesn't look like anyone that's trying to evangelize me, so we're good.
I was about to say, have you heard about our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ?
Okay, no, it's probably some. Based upon the dress, I'm gonna guess he's a landscaper or a tree cutter and wants to see if he can take my money. Okay. Okay, so that brings us on topic. How do you make those adjustments? So tell me.
My greatest example is that I did a one shot once, and it was for level 5 characters, and I didn't realize it. And I had a bunch of level 1 characters.
And on the flip
That's
side,
my
on,
greatest.
on the flip side, you kind of did that with Minds of Fandelver, in that the campaign was designed for I don't know what, four to six characters or something, and you had like
And I
eight.
at one point in time I had like 12. I had a full table of 12, but that was because I didn't know that I could do the code thing. And that's how the code thing was born. Um comma yeah, I realized that Fandelver became Baby Easy and everybody just zoomed through it, and things weren't as hard as they could be, or people weren't getting as creative as they could be because it was Baby Easy,
Right.
which
So,
also is how "Don't Break My Game" became a thing, and that's my players know that's my number one rule is don't
so
break my game.
you use the word creative or creativity, and that's something that's often overlooked in terms of challenges. We typically think of challenges or challenge ratings or whatever, excuse me, in a combat setting, and not the level of difficulty challenge, the level of difficulty in the dungeon crawl, in the exploration, in the pits and the traps and the obstacles that are in
Mm,
the way between the
I got a lot of
characters
those.
and the big bad evil guy, right? Their destination. We often overlook that and don't think about that. And obviously, that's much more difficult to put a number on that. How do you quantify the level of difficulty of a trap? I mean, I suppose you can to an extent, but if it's more of a puzzle based, but
All the memes about it's the picture of people and they're confused, and it's like my party trying to figure out a riddle for fifth graders.
yeah, are you smarter than a fifth grader?
He's smarter than a fifth grader.
It's
I
funny
love that.
it's funny you say that because generally I'm smarter than a fifth grader, but today they had Battle of the Brains on our local news channel, which is the trivia
Ooh.
competition between local
Right,
high
right, right.
schools, and
Yes.
I am not high school smart. I'm not.
You're like,
I'm fifth grader smart. I can take out a fifth grader any day, but I cannot take out a high school student. I cannot.
yeah, high schoolers are built different, man. They get crammed.
Now, of course, when I was in high school,
Information
I
just
I
gets
could have competed in that
crammed.
show, but not now. Not now, but I can still take out a fifth grader. So anyway,
LOL.
so
I have a bunch of puzzles in Strahd, and it's new for me because Phandelver had like 0 puzzles.
mhm.
So to now have traps and puzzles is very fun for me, and I really wanted to try and integrate it. Maybe even because I have some supplemental stuff, maybe even a little more, adding even more little supplemental traps or little supplemental riddles into the additional modded information that I have. Because it's just so interesting, and it would be interesting to have that interaction because it's not, it's almost like its own pillar. Traps and riddles and, puzzles is almost, it's like a fourth pillar,
It
like a
is. I would say
3.5
almost like a subcategory of
of
exploration.
exploration.
Yeah,
Yeah.
or niche or so. Anyway, but so that unto itself is interesting, right? Because you can have smart players that could figure out that puzzle in 2 seconds, but the
But if the
characters are
character is
friggin'
dumb,
dumb. So like, how do you adjudicate that? And vice versa, right? You could have some dumb players with really smart characters, and that's even harder to say, oh my
oh yeah.
God, this guy's as dumb as rocks. Holy shit. And yet the
Oh, but I'm
character's
playing a
really
level
smart, so
7
you almost
spellcaster.
like have to give it to him because the player can't figure it out, but you know damn well that 18 level or 18 intelligence guy can figure it out. And you have to
Yeah.
spoon feed it to him,
I had to
you
do that
know?
to my players last night a couple times. I was like, this is going to happen. And then they're like, And I could see the inner turmoil because they're like, me as a player, no. Me as my dumb character, yes. I did that. That's how I charmed Yolvara. That's how I charmed Peyton's character. Strahd, oh, what did he do to her? He caught her off guard and he did something. And she's like, no, I'm gonna look down. And I'm like, are you though? I said, is Yolvara actually gonna look down? And she goes, no, actually, she probably wouldn't. And I was like, no, she wouldn't. Make me a wisdom saving throw.
Yep.
And
And
she got
again, right.
caught.
And that there is I don't want to say an example of metagaming because it's not so much metagaming, but an example of player maturity, right? Not the person, the player. Because the more mature player, you wouldn't even have had to raise that question with them. The more experienced, more mature player, they just would
He
have actually
already knew.
role played it, saying, yeah, yeah, okay, yep, yeah, this is what I would do. So, and we've kind of touched
Sophia
upon
definitely,
that before, player
Tiefling also did
maturity,
that.
player, and so on. So.
But to quantify, like CR for encounters as far as exploration or in role play is definitely harder than to, and you kind of have to be on your seat about that. And that's maybe where roles come in, where if you're like, my players aren't getting this, let's try and spoon feed them some information, plant a seed, as you like to say, to try and give them a hint. Or even maybe asking the table, like, you guys want a hint? And of course, the table's gonna be like, no, no, figure it out. But to try and be like uh, aware of where they're at, even though you know all the answers, is definitely a thing. But for combat, I found this website that I sent you. Um, did you want to share screen, or did you want me to share screen?
Well, no,
Does
I
it
can
work?
actually. I'm gonna.
If
Well,
I
no, you stay as you are. You look at it on your own browser. You don't need to share it. I will pull it up on my screen over here, so I can see the browser, and I will share the browser to the video as well.
I'll just block my
Let me
face.
just. Okay, I got that up, and switch over to Chrome. I think maybe. Hang on. Why properties? Hang on. Capture mode. That's not helping. That's not helping. Oh, I got the wrong Chrome. There we go. Making a little bit of progress here. Hang on. And lock that. Okay, I'm looking at it with you, and we have that recording on Discord.
I like there's two links at the top, and it's a how-to, and then below it is encounter balancing tips. It's a little chunky paragraph, but it's maybe like half a page. Um, it's it gives some pretty good tips. The biggest one, of course, is resting, quantities of rests in 5e.
I'm sorry, where are you seeing this?
So on the page, Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition
Uh-huh.
encounter calculator.
Yep.
Underneath is how to use this calculator.
Uh-huh.
If you click on it, it'll open a paragraph.
Oh, I see. Okay, I got it.
That one's unimportant. It's a pretty self-explanatory website. Below that is encounter balancing tips.
Yes.
You click it, and it's about a half a page of text. Um, I do also find I did this when I was using this calculator when I did the mansion wave thing that I was talking to you about that I did last night, where a wave of monsters comes to attack the house. I did this encounter, and I think I did. Let me see what I actually did because I did. Oh no, you know what? I didn't put it at deadly. I put it at hard. Um, because there's easy, medium, hard, deadly. Those are the levels. So I went through my list of monsters that Strahd controls. Strahd can control wolves. He can control Strahd zombies, which are a subspecies of zombie. He can control regular zombies. He can control dire wolves.
Are you giving away too
So I
much?
used no because that's what attacked the house,
Okay.
and then Strahd showed up, and then they all left when he left. So it's pretty self-explanatory. Um, so I used those monsters to then calculate how they weren't going to be fighting the entire encounter, but I didn't want it to be boring. So I had to calculate how many monsters I had, and I didn't do XP. It says monster XP as an option. I used challenge rating CR.
Okay. So give me some numbers I can fill in here.
I'll have to pull up a. I'll have to pull up. Hold on, let me pull up the monster manual.
So I can better understand.
Yeah, but let me just pull up D&D Beyond. Okay, so a regular zombie is CR a quarter. I
Like
did
like
3
zero
zombies.
point two five.
I think you have to do 1 space 4. I mean 1/4.
Okay, I get it. Okay. Okay, 1/4.
And
Quantity
then
3.
I did 3. I did 2 dire wolves. Dire wolves are a CR 1. And then you add another row, and then I did 3 regular wolves.
At a challenge rating of.
I think they're like a quarter.
Okay.
They
And
are.
then
They're rating a quarter.
and then calculate.
And then I did 1 more, and their rating is the same as. Actually, I actually don't think their rating is. I think their rating is higher. The last is Strahd zombies.
Okay. How many?
It doesn't pop up. I hate D&D Beyond. I did 3. I did 2 Strahd zombies, and I'm pretty sure their CR is actually 3.
Okay.
But let me verify because I don't want to lie to you. Challenge rating 1, so JK. So they're the same as the direwolf. So 3-2-3, 3-2-3-2, and then 1, and then calculate. So for this, you also have to do the party. Like I said, 8 characters, level 3.
Got it.
Cool. And then the calculate button at the bottom under monsters
Mm-hmm.
will then calculate characters 8, large party, monster 10, which is considered a gang.
Mm-hmm.
There's experience if you use experience.
I like it.
There's a multiplier, there's an adjusted, and then there's a entire encounter challenge rating. and then it says the difficulty is hard. I think that that wasn't 100%. I think my party members, Alistair almost died. He got very close to it. But everybody else was pretty much fine, but they didn't play out the entire thing. I didn't let them play out the entire thing. But we went, I don't know, like 3 rounds, and they killed half of them. So if maybe both the direwolves weren't involved in the fight at all. They were both being James did like an illusion magic on one. He did like a wonder wall on one of them, and then so it got stuck in an illusion. And then the other one was attacking the cellar. And if I instead targeted not the cellar to try and go around the back and go in from the basement, if I tried to target, the front of the house and a direwolf hit the front of the house, I feel like probably it would have been harder. But, it didn't really matter because I said that I'm going to make this halfway decent challenge. I'm going to make it at least a little hard, wear them down, beat them up a little bit. And then as soon as they kill, because that's what, 10?
Mm-hmm.
3, 6, 7, 8, 9,
Okay.
10, that's 10 monsters. So when they killed half the monsters, 5, I was going to have Strahd show up. He chases them off. Well, he doesn't chase them off. They run away. They notice his presence, and all of the monsters flee. And then he knocks on the door, and then it starts the role play.
Okay, I got you. I kind of like that. Now,
But
I have a couple questions here on the website. If you know. On the left-hand side with the party, it says results, easy, medium, hard, deadly, and it has experience point values for that. Do you know what that's
right,
for?
um, I think it's the level of experience to how many players. So if you do it based off experience, you could use that instead of the monster calculator below and typing all of that shit in. So the table below the party gives you a baseline calculation using experience instead of I changed it from challenge rating. I mean experience to challenge rating. But if you were a smart person and you knew that information off the top of your head, you could then build an encounter. Let's say you want to build a hard encounter for the party, whatever. Then you know you're going to have to hit around 1,800 experience points if you know all that stuff off the top of your head. I do not. Some people do. Some people have that whole
Okay,
crap memorized.
hang on. I'm not following this. I see hard as 1800 experience points. Is that 1800 experience points that the characters should already have going into this combat?
No,
That's how many experience points they would earn if they were successful in the combat?
theoretically,
Okay, then
as a whole party.
okay, that's fine. If that's the case, then what on the other side, the monster side, the right-hand side column, it says result and it shows experience points to award.
Yeah, so I didn't hit the 1,200 mark. So really, mine is on the low end of hard.
Well, I guess I'm asking like which one do you use? If the party is successful in this combat, whatever, do I use the left-hand side experience points to award or the right-hand side experience to award? Where it
The
actually
left
says
hand is an
XP to
average.
award.
The left is an average. The right is an actual calculation.
Adjusted. Okay, and I also find interesting as well that using the challenge rating, little checkbox there next to the monsters, it says
Mhm.
the encounter difficulty is hard. If you uncheck that and recalculate, it makes it deadly.
Well, because we changed experience points, it went to XP, and so the challenge rating, the 1/4, the one, didn't change. We didn't put in monster XP.
Oh, I see. I see. Okay, I see. I see what
The
it's
number
changing.
didn't
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
change.
yeah. Okay.
You'd think it would have calculated it, but it didn't. Two different units of measurement. It
Yeah, yeah,
didn't
I see that
calculate
now.
different unit of measurement. I wish it
I
did.
see that.
That'd be
All
cool.
right, so well, in a sense, it seems contradict. Anyway, but no, something like this concept
It's a
here,
simple website.
yeah,
It's not
I
the
think
most,
is a good tool for a
just
new,
for a baseline.
yeah, for a baseline for a
Yeah.
newer DM to get a sense of how difficulty a combat would be. But
Yes.
I think in
And that's why I
time,
use it.
I
I
think
won't need it. Correct.
I think in time, this becomes less of a or should become less of a need for a DM as they gain a little experience in exposure to these combats and knowing what would be kind of balance. Now, I wonder though, like I would be curious to use this calculator in this example that we're talking about and actually play out this combat and see they call it hard. How hard is hard? How deadly is deadly?
Well,
You
and
know,
so
is that a little
the
bit of a misnomer?
yeah, so in the tips in that paragraph, it does say, hold on, I have to find it. I just read it a second ago. Oh, here it is. If you're using this calculator a lot, you may have found that it can seem to overstate the difficulty of encounters. It then says, first, I'll explain why this happens and then how you can fix it. It then goes to talk about how the reason fifth edition uh, combat encounters are so easy is that the biggest culprit is how many times they're resting. And you and me talked about gritty realism already, and so did Chase, where a short rest is a full
Yeah.
12 hours and a long rest is a week.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
Um, and he goes the in the paragraph it goes to talk about parties tend to do 2 to 3 encounters per long rest, often with short rests in between. It makes more sense for some playstyles, but causes balance issues. Um,
But this here is a tool, and
Correct.
like any other tool in life, there's a time and a place for it, and you have to know how to use the tool. Is kind of that's kind of like what I'm hearing here. You know, reading through the lines. And I've heard before. Well, I don't pay too close attention when people start talking about challenger ratings and stuff because it doesn't exist in 1E. Um, and I don't worry about it.
Well,
Um,
so do you then do experience instead?
but I've heard Luke Hart from the DM layer talk about challenger ratings and how they're not all that accurate, and they may or may not be very helpful to use. Your question is, do I use experience points instead for what?
For well, I guess you don't need it. You're more of a veteran DM than
I
me.
was going to say, yeah, I don't use anything to determine. I don't have any sort of computation to determine a fair and balanced combat.
Well,
I
so
just
I did all of this, right? And I did the whole thing. I did the whole calculation, and then I ran it. And I did think that it was actually a little easy. And if they were going to go through and do it again, or they were going to go through with the entire fight, I think I would have added a second round
okay,
because I didn't wear them down enough.
right, right. And especially as if this is the precursor combat going into the big bad evil guy, right? In this case, your case, Strahd.
Well, they didn't
So
fight him, but
I want to kind of dovetail into that in a second. So to further answer your question, like what do I do? Well, generally I kind of use the campaign, the module, if you will, as my guide. Okay, and if I find so like I generally don't prep the combat in the sense of I'm not creating a module, I'm not creating the combat, it's already there for me. So I generally am not going to adjust things in my prep. I'll have some ideas on how I can adjust that on the fly if I need to, but I'm generally not unless I'm creating a random encounter.
yeah, I created this encounter.
Um,
It wasn't in
okay,
anything. I created it.
so if I'm creating an encounter, my first thought is, what is my objective? Is the objective to wear them down in terms of hit points? Is it my objective to kind of suck down their resources as they're getting ready for whatever might be upcoming?
To
So
prove a point.
that's my first question I ask myself when I'm truly creating an encounter. Um, and if it is just to kind of wear them down a little bit of hit points, maybe a little bit of resources, whether that be physical or magical,
Spell slots. Yeah.
then it's a question. Yeah, so like I don't know how to answer that. Let me think about that a second. Like, what would I do?
There's another combat
Hmm.
encounter that I'm going to do soon, um, and I'm gonna try not to spoil it. But
Well,
there is
this video won't appear on YouTube probably for like a month or so. Actually, more than that.
okay, so
So,
that's 4 sessions, so
so
we'll
yeah,
probably get through it.
yeah.
Okay, so then I could probably talk about it then.
Hang on, add something. Hang on, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, this probably won't appear for like 5 weeks.
Okay, I'll probably talk about it then.
So,
You think I won't talk about it until you're done thinking. Finish your thought.
um,
I'll distract you otherwise.
No, 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 because if you talk, it's going to distract me. All right, so what do I do? So I think about if it's hit points I'm after, then I think more of a slugfest, right? If I'm trying to wear down the party on hit points, I need something that's going to be a slugfest. So it's going to be inflicting
Putting them in
damage.
terrain or,
S-
like, long distance damage?
So it's going to be it might be probably going to be several creatures, right? Because usually the lower quantity of creatures, the less impactful it's going to be in terms of hit points on a party of 4, 5, 6, 8 characters if I only got one bad guy. Unless, of course, the bad guy's really strong, and then at that point it starts to feel like a minor big bad evil guy.
A boss battle.
And if we're not quite there yet, then that's not what I want to do. So I'll have several. If I have a party of 6, I'll do probably from like half to 1.5 times the size of the party. So if there are 6 characters, I'm looking probably three to 9 bad guys. Nine's kind of high. I don't want to manage 9, so I'm probably going to do I'm probably going to do 3 to 6. Half the party
I
size,
managed 10.
half the party size to the party size. Okay. So your table's 8, so I'd have 4 to 8 bad guys, and I need to make sure that their hit dice, their level, if you will, is pretty comparable to the party. So you have a third level party, so the bad guys, all 8 of them that you'd be
Probably gonna be
presenting, are probably going to be about 3 hit dice, give or
right.
take. Okay, and the damage they inflict needs to be pretty
Significant.
similar, pretty similar to what the party would in terms of raw melee combat, right? So if you got a guy has a long bow and another one that has a long sword, that's roughly a D8, right? Per attack. So the bad guys have to be pretty similar to that, regardless of what their type of attack is. Okay, and that should be a pretty fair, balanced combat. The characters will have the advantage of multiple attacks or spells that they can utilize, so they'll still have the upper hand. Not significantly, but they'll still have the upper hand, and that they have quantity, right? They'll have 8 characters to maybe 4 to 6, maybe as high as 8, but 4 to 6 bad guys. So the party should come out victorious without a great level of difficulty, but still suck down some of their resources, hit points,
Yeah.
equipment, and so on, right?
Spells,
Right.
whatever.
And then if I find in the actual gameplay that like, I miscalculated, I underestimated one way or the other,
Mm.
then I need to adjust that on the fly. And that's the other half of this conversation that we're going to have. But um, so I'm not creating, ultimately, I guess what I'm saying is that I don't create too many encounters unto themselves. I have what's in the module. I'll kind of modify that a little bit, or like upcoming here on Friday night, Sinister Secret of Salt Marsh. The party's getting ready to um, they're anticipating boarding the ship, boarding the bad guy's ship. And
They're
as
waiting
it
for
was
the
very
full
clearly
moon.
stated in the module, as a reminder to the DM, that the guys who are on the ship, they know the ship like the back of their hand. So they have the
Home field
advantage of
advantage.
movement and moving around like sneakily or silently, right? And that they're also roaming because they're working the ship. They're not going to be stationary in each individual cabin or room or what have you. So it's not going to be like a dungeon crawl. People are always going to be moving around. All these pirates are always going to be moving around. So when the party boards the ship, aside from being notified and alarmed and stuff, bad guys are going to be moving around. So while they might be venturing through this deck over here, which seems empty, they could just randomly run into someone. It's not really a random encounter, in the traditional sense. It's that's what's happening on board.
They're just
And,
walking around. They're doing
and
their job.
so, how is that computed? How is that balanced? Well, it's probably not going to be balanced. It's probably going to be very much in the party's favor because you're going to have 1 or 2 pirates that they just happen to kind of encounter, you know. But as a whole, that ship will be challenging because it's going to be like you described. It's going to be like wave
Stealthy.
after wave after wave after wave, you know.
Oh, coming from the little cracks and corners
Right.
too.
So they're going to get 2 or 3 guys here. They take care of that. Well, they've made noise. So then a couple of the guys are going to come, and a couple of the guys are going to come.
Which is
Is how I
another way to
suspect
wear
it's going
them
to
down.
happen. It's going to be a wave-like combat, unless by chance, and I have no idea how it's going to play out, unless by chance the party makes their presence known, and the guys on board take more definitive action and they formulate a plan and come together as a group to thwart
The party.
the party, which in their eyes would be the bad guys.
Do you think they're gonna parlay at all? Do you think they're gonna just try and role play it and no combat at all
No, because they've essentially have been incentivized. Now,
to kill them?
I'm hoping they will with some, that they'll
Save a
snag
guy,
a couple guys, uh,
get some intel.
right, gain some intelligence, have some negotiations with them, whatever. But they've essentially have been incentivized not to do that, because they've been told that whatever they find on the ship is all for them.
Oh
So
yeah,
all the
that's a
goods on
big
the ship are for them.
incentivizer. Yeah, it's treasure. What's more beneficial than loot? I did
So
that to
now, just the
convince
same
the
though,
party to
if
bury a guy.
if the party were able to negotiate that well enough and get the bad guys to surrender, they could still potentially get all the stuff on the ship, I guess. But realistically, that's not how that's going to happen
Probably not, no.
because after all, it's D&D and you're played to fight shit.
Fight shit, yeah.
So,
Well, especially more so, I feel like in first edition. I feel like first edition is more combat oriented or
hmm
combat centric, but that's because the entire game system is more tactical. It's more strategic. It's more placement based. I sent you another chart about challenge ratings and stuff like that. And that's kind of like what you were talking about. Well, for this character level, there's this number of monsters. For this character level, there's this number of monsters. Um, but again, it also does like 5e CR ratings, which first edition doesn't have CR ratings on the monsters. But and it doesn't talk about experience points; it just talks about challenge ratings, which is found in the monster manual. Um, but I thought that chart was also maybe a handy tool if I couldn't find a good enough website to calculate it, that I
hmm
could just use that chart.
yeah, like
And
like a little
then,
quick reference card.
a quick reference card. Yeah, maybe print it on an index card or whatever for
Yeah,
my prep when I
yeah.
do prep night, just so I have the calculation right there, so I don't have to look it up on Pinterest every single time. Um, but so the other thing that I was uh, so you're hopeful that they're gonna like murder all the pirates, but you're thinking it's gonna be in waves.
Yeah,
Do
not.
they
I mean, not so much hopeful, but that's kind of what I anticipate they'll do.
I feel like a wave isn't as you know how we talked about, well, just adding more monsters is gonna just slog things down. I feel like a wave is more story driven and it's a little more exciting. It is still a slog because it's still just more dudes. But at least it's story relevant and it's just not there are more dudes, surprise. At least it's there are dudes hidden in cracks and crevices of the ship and they stop their jobs to come and see what's going on. Oh, they found you. Oh, it's battle
Well,
time.
and I agree. Like I like the idea of waves, certainly in this setting because it very much makes sense. But
Instead of just a horde.
even if you're talking of a typical dungeon crawl, right? That the the boss guy, big bad evil guy, whatever, often has their own little minions. Some may be with them, like hanging out. They might be the concubines of the chieftain, or they might be their little workers tending to his lavish lifestyle, and they just break out a sword because they're there to protect their boss.
Oh my
So
god,
in a
the
sense, it will still
things
often
living
come
in
in
the castle
waves, and not just bad, boss guy and all his little guys all at the same time.
all
So
at once.
I think,
Yeah,
very organically,
horde.
most campaigns do come in waves. It's just a question of how much spacing is there between the waves. So if you find in the moment that your combat is unbalanced,
What do you do?
and you can pick a way, right? What do you do? Um, what do you do if it's unbalanced in favor of the bad guys? On the fly,
Oh,
whether it be the module didn't portray it well, you miscalculated in creating this, whatever the case may be. And I'm not saying unbalanced because the bad guys are getting all the good rolls and the players are not. That's not unbalanced. That's different. But if you find out that you had too many bad guys, or you made them too, the damage they're inflicting is much more than what it should be, because you thought you needed to increase the damage they cause to the party to make it balanced, and it turns out you were wrong. How do you adjust that on the fly when the bad guys have already have the upper hand?
So I'm gonna send you the wolf stat block for 5e. And I've kind of touched on this before. So that's the wolf stat block for 5e. Um, in there, it does the plus. Wow, hello camera. It does the plus to hit, so it does the modifier to hit on the d20 under the bite action. Melee weapon attack +4 to hit, reach 5 foot, one target, hit. It does 7, which is the
Yep,
average
yep.
of what 2d4 plus 2 would be.
Mm-hmm.
So I could just say 7 damage every time,
Correct,
which
correct.
is
And that's one way to
that.
speed up combat and make your math simple.
Well, and also that website that I showed you, how it says adjusted difficulty rating. I wonder if that's with the monsters using like that average, or if that's the monsters using maximum damage. Um,
Where on that do you see adjusted difficulty rating?
underneath the monster calculation,
Oh, okay, okay, yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, for the experience points, yeah.
right? And so it's
Okay.
significantly higher. And I wonder if that's all of the monsters doing maximum damage, not critical damage, maximum damage. So 2d4 plus 2 would be 8, 10 points of damage. Every time a wolf bites, it does 10 instead of doing 7,
Mm. Yeah, I see what you're
thus
saying.
making everything harder, which is something that you could adjust. But what you were saying, if it's too hard, let's say I'm just murdering folks over here, instead of doing 2d4 plus 2, I'll just do 2d4 and I won't add the modifier. If it's still bad, maybe I'll do 1d4 plus 2 and I'll get rid of a dice. Um, the same can be said for the opposite. If it's too easy, then maybe I'll add a dice or I'll increase the dice. Instead of a d4, it'll turn to a d6, um,
Now,
which we've also touched on before a
yeah,
little bit.
if the bad guys have the upper hand, and I don't mean truly the upper hand like they're just getting the roles playing better, but it's unbalanced in favor of the bad guys, okay? You have 10 wolves, let's say, and heck, maybe you needed 7, right? So the extra 3, the party's getting their ass kicked because you miscalculated, you didn't plan this well. Do you consider changing the hit points that the wolf would have? Instead of having 11, maybe they only have 7?
Oh, that they're weakened.
Yeah.
I did that for a random encounter because the random encounter table that I used was self-made and I wasn't very confident on it. And I accidentally did something very strong against the party. I rolled for the number of dudes and it was a lot. And I was like, that seems like a lot. So on the fly, I said, okay, well, they're all half health. Or maybe I had to go. Maybe it's really close to leaving time. Um, it was wrap up time basically, and I want to try and finish the encounter. So they all showed up at half health, and they were all like damaged or weakened, starving, and then they had half health. Same monster, same attacks, half health.
And that's something, it's interesting you say that because that is something that I think very few people think about when the party is encountering bad guys. You always assume, as the DM, you always assume the bad guys have full health. Random
Yeah,
encounter,
they're
planned
fine.
encounter, whatever. And even if they have some melee, some combat with the bad guy escapes and comes back the next day or later in the same day. Is the real DM really thinking that, hey man, this guy has only has 10 hit points when he started with 20? Or did he
Oh, like
heal a
Urfa
little bit
Bandit.
overnight? Did he consume a potion? Did he cast Cure Light Wounds on himself? Whatever it may be. I think too often, DMs overlook that, but especially
In 5e.
at the start of a random encounter, wolves, maybe they got their ass kicked yesterday, and all they have is 6 hit points and not 11. And
Maybe one of them was fighting for alpha position and it got injured
correct,
really
yeah, yeah,
bad.
yeah, yeah. But we never really, as DMs, we never really consider that.
Maybe they ran into a group of hunters.
Yeah, and one of them has an arrow in his side,
Yeah, something.
you know?
Add a little more flavor to then justify the. So like we were in Death House and there's um ghouls and ghasts, and they thrive off of the flesh of others. They eat people. They're zombies. They're zombie upgrades. And for because in the campaign, the player characters in story don't ever go. It's not like an endless supply of heroes that Strahd just invites to Barovia. He doesn't do that. He waits a little while. He gets bored of playing with these characters, and it'll be generations before he invites more heroes into Barovia. So for Death House, I thought it made sense that, well, maybe there hasn't been any characters for a while. These guys are starving. They haven't had player characters in here for a long time. Maybe they're starting to feel a little rough. Maybe they're starting to get a little starving, a little hungry. So I put them at a lowered health and then justified it that they were
Hmm.
hungry.
So, and what about the flip side? What if the party has the upper hand because you miscalculated the other way? You don't have enough bad guys.
I usually just add bad guys.
Okay, so if you add bad guys,
I haven't had that problem yet with a party of 8.
um, wait, you haven't had the problem with a party of 8 of the party having the upper hand,
Oh, well, no, yeah, it's the opposite. I always have that problem. So what do
right?
I do to stop it?
Right. So, like you said, you can add more bad guys. If you do, I suggest waves and not just mass, right?
Right, and that's what I wanted to do with the house. If they're gonna play out the combat, there's gonna be another wave with the exact same number of
Right.
bad guys.
And one of the reasons why I like the waves is because there's a certain level of realism in that, right? Because the party encounters a few bad guys, that makes a commotion, that makes noise, that draws attention from the guys who are back down the hall for them to come in and check out and see what's going on. But also
Or
because,
the pack of wolves howls, and then
right,
it brings another pack of wolves.
but also because the party has that combat and they think they're done. They take a sigh, they get themselves back together, maybe they even heal up, quaff a potion,
Howl in the
whatever,
distance.
whatever it is, and they think they're good, and they stop making their way through the rest of the room towards the next door. Then they get flanked from the door they just came through because they made a commotion and more bad guys are coming, and it kind of comes in
Yeah,
waves. Um, but then,
they don't perceive it.
right, that increase of combatants, I'm kind of okay with. But just to increase the initial number and have just one giant slugfest,
No. Yeah, I agree with
is not
that.
the best option. Now,
Unless it's like zombies.
so if the
A
players have the
horde.
upper hand, of course you can increase the hit points that the bad guys have, which draws out the duration of the combat. But if you only have two bad guys, let's say, and you need to draw it out a little bit, you might have to. But that's not the I don't for me that's not the preferred. I rather have the bad
An
guys have
extra
a
attack.
better chance of landing a successful blow. So maybe they get +2 to hit or whatever it is. I don't know, some sort of modifier to that, or they roll with advantage for every attack. Perhaps you can increase the number of attacks that they have per round because they're super fast. Or better yet, they do more damage. And that's going
Yeah,
to be
more
far
damage.
more threatening to the party than the number of attacks or if the combat draws out because the bad guy has more hit points. And instead of doing how many points of damage did the wolf do? 7 on average?
Hit is 7 on average. You can roll 2d4 plus 2.
Right. So instead of doing 7 on average, maybe he does 10 on average or 12 on average. That's the
Well, 10
average.
is max.
Well, I understand,
Because
but
4
but
and
but you're
4,
changing that. You're
2.
changing that.
Right. I don't have to stay raw.
Correct. So
Or maybe
he's a
add an
super strong
additional.
wolf. Like you said, he's the alpha wolf. He's the exception, you know? So
Yeah, he gets an extra whatever. Or a multi
so
attack, 2 bites.
so maybe he does max damage. Or maybe that's not enough.
Or maybe he does like a poison bite, and
So
then you get the poison
yeah,
damage,
or there you go. So long-term effect. You get an infection.
long term effect. You
Yeah.
ping him.
So not poison like right now you're gonna take extra damage or you're gonna die or something, but over time, over the next day or two, that infection starts growing. You're getting weaker, your constitution drops, your strength drops, something like that.
Curse.
So
Curses are
it all
big
so it
in
depends. It
Strahd.
depends kind of what the goal is or what needs to happen here as the party get closer and closer to the big bad evil guy. But I like the idea of increasing damage.
I forgot. Guess what all of my charmed simps did? They all ate dream pies again.
Oh,
I forgot. So the backlash to failing the dream pie, to becoming addicted and then not getting the fix, is disadvantage on the it's on skills first, and then it goes to attacks.
So all these quick side note here from combat, but all these little
So
small nuances
addiction.
make it interesting, make the game interesting, right? And give it its unique flavor. But
Exciting.
it's more and more shit to keep track of.
Oh, I know. And technically all of them have in mind, they also have all these secrets. Each player has their own secret, and some of them are linked to dreams. So I have to remember during long rests those couple little secrets that are linked to dreams. And if they have to do a check during a long rest to see if they get nightmares. And if they wake up and have nightmares, then they don't receive the benefit of their long rest,
Okay.
or they receive half benefit from the long rest.
Okay.
Um,
That's something different.
Yeah, and like I said, there's some curses in the valley that do stuff like that. The Vistani people have curses. You piss them off, they'll curse you. And those curses do some crazy shit. To which I cannot wait for somebody to piss somebody off. It is
Um,
gonna be great.
but on combat though, I'm thinking about this as you're talking, that if you modify the damage that the bad guy does because the encounter was imbalanced from the beginning due to a miscalculation on the DM, which isn't fair to the bad guys and makes it too easy for the good
Oh,
guys and therefore not fun in the same way.
mm,
And you need to make that adjustment. And you say instead of doing 7 points of damage every round, this wolf is going to do whatever, 10 or 12. You pick your number, okay? I don't think though that at that point, I think you need to make that commitment and say he's going to do 12 points or 10 points every attack, every successful
yeah, you
attack.
make that decision.
I
Otherwise, you
don't
can't.
think even if you make that decision right now on the fly because you need to, I don't think you should go back and change it again and increase it to 12 or increase it to 14 or pull it back and say, oh, it's only going to be 6 because I overcalculated again. I overcompensated. I think once you make that change, you need to stick with it
Yeah, that's
for
it.
good or for bad. You can't be changing back and forth, back and forth, back and forth.
D&D Beyond is failing me.
So in short, I think both ways you can increase hit points. I don't think I'm not really in strong favor of that. You can increase the number of bad guys, which is essentially increasing the number of attacks, right? Same net effect. Or you could just increase the number of attacks that the existing bad guys have. And I think very impactful is increasing the damage. Increasing the damage. So I guess it depends. Number of attacks versus damage would depend upon what the like functionality, what the purpose was of the encounter. What was the intention of that, or what was the goal? If it's to wear the party down, I'd probably say increase the hit points, or increase the damage.
Yeah, whatever you're trying to do. If it's shock and awe, then you
Well,
make it way too hard on purpose.
I say that, but I think about that as I'm saying it. I'm going to change my answer. I'm thinking shock and awe would be a lot of damage, and they say, "Holy shit, this wolf he's on steroids, right?
Yeah,
He's
what the fuck? Run
one bite,
away!
one bite, and I'm half dead already, right? But if I do multiple attacks, then I can inflict that good damage on multiple different characters and wear the party down as a whole, as opposed to wearing down one character to near death and everyone else is doing just fine."
Well, so the combat encounter that that I was scared about spoiling is old Bone Grinder, the windmill of witches. It is a hag coven. So in 5e, hags are stronger when there is three and they are together. They're close to each other. They become a higher level spellcaster when they are together than when they are separate. They know lightning bolt, and they can cast it at higher levels if all three of them are together. And so you can literally murder everyone by just spamming lightning bolt. All three of them
Mm-hmm.
collectively spamming lightning bolt. So you can murder them. You can murder all of them instantly. The challenge rating gets redonkulous. Um, so to rectify that, The mod has one of the witches arrive late so that they don't become an uber coven, um, which I'm okay with. I think that's fair enough for a level 4 party. And my thing about if it's too easy, if they seem to be murdering the witches too quickly, or they seem like the witches are losing too fast, it's only been a round or two and they're already almost dead, I'm gonna have them. There's a thing that they can do where they summon these demons, but only the main witch, the leader, can summon them. She can summon one per round. She can use her action to summon one, and she can control up to nine.
How many of
So
these?
that's
How many of these hags?
nine
How many hags
demons.
need to be together to pool their resources?
All three have to.
Okay.
Usually a coven of three. Three plus.
So, and if you're planning on having one come late, okay, so you got two,
I was gonna have the other
and then
ones
you have the backup.
also be able to summon demons.
But if you have two and they have their backup, right? The backup would be the leader one who can summon. And then if one of the hags go down first and the big strong one shows up, then they can't pull their resources. But if need be, you could have two show up. So therefore they could still pool. And just because she
Yeah,
can't, just because
theoretically, I
they
didn't say.
yeah, just because you can summon demons doesn't mean that she has to, right? So if the three of them whip out a lightning bolt and it's very effective, then she may not need to summon demons because then at that point it might be too much for the party.
Well, yeah, and that's how I was gonna balance it. I wasn't just
Yeah.
gonna spam lightning on all of them. I was gonna try and be a little more creative, and try and you know derail them a little bit differently.
So other
That's
than
what they complained about. The boss fight in the death house was that there were no minions, and basically all the party had to do was shoot it from a distance, and it went down in like 3 rounds.
did the boss how did the boss fight? Like what was his method of attack?
The shambling mound has two attacks. It has like a psychic screech, and then it has like two slams.
Okay. Yeah,
So it
I
has
got
a
you.
multi attack, or it has a psychic scream.
Right. So obviously easy to defeat from distance.
Right. It didn't have any
Especially
distance.
right, especially if my arrow is greater range than his psychic attack.
So they were in a pretty confined space. Everyone was gonna get hit by
Okay.
it. It didn't matter.
Um, yeah, so his melee was out of the question. All he had was his psychic attack. He had eight characters against one bad guy. Yeah.
And if I had given him minions, that's what Chase told me. Chase was like, "Well, you know what would have made that fight better?" I'm like, "What?" And he goes, "Minions." He said that the cultists that appeared to chant him into existence, they were shadows the whole time. If I made them real,
Hmm.
and then I had the cultists try and attack the guys who were firing arrows and shit, then it would have given the mound more
Yeah. A
efficacy.
better opportunity. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I would agree with that. Because like we were talking about earlier, if you've got a party and just one boss and that's it, there's nothing in between them, then it's
Yeah.
yeah,
What are you gonna do?
yeah.
It's overkill.
Yeah, six versus one. Unless of course you got someone like Strahd who's just a monstrosity unto himself, right? And therefore six versus one might be pretty okay. But again, you still got
Because
six
you can
attacks
trap
versus
them.
one attack. Even though this one
Oh,
attack might be
separating the
really strong, it might
party.
have spells, you got six attacks versus one attack.
I can separate the party on different levels of the castle. I'm gonna have to ask you to look at the elevator trap for me because it's a little confusing to me. But
Okay.
I think I know. I think I kind of know. It's like a trap door, and then it's a weighted system,
Hmm.
and it just flings you to the top of the castle. Um, and there's like a sleep poison
Mm.
gas happens inside of the elevator, but it's really fast. And by the time you reach the top, you're asleep. It like knocks you out. And then Strud comes in, gets a bite, and then leaves.
All right. We
It's in
are
the
at
trap
our
door.
1 hour mark. I think we've did a little more than scratch the surface. We've kind of talked about this again. We rehashed this again. I think what it boils down to is when you need to adjust on the fly, you do have a few options, right? You can change the damage inflicted by the bad guys. You can change, plus or minus, depending which way you need to go. You can change the number of attacks. You can play with the hit points, and of course you can play with the quantity of bad guys. That's your four things that you can do. And depending upon the specific scenario you're working with, and as well as the specific objective of the encounter, would determine what you modify of those four.
And that comes down in prep,
Comes out a little bit in prep.
especially
Well, I
for
mean,
combat.
ideally in prep, you won't need to modify anything, right? Because you have a nice,
No,
perfectly balanced, fair combat. But sometimes shit happens, right? You plan the combat for this, and somehow the party splits. Well, in that case, that's their own dumb fault. But um, if a couple characters go down, let's say, and you don't want to torture them, you want to make it a little more balanced. Whatever the reason is, the combat's imbalanced, and you need to do something. There
you
are
need to
some
fix
ways
it.
to do that to kind of
Oh,
keep it,
on the fly. Yeah,
yeah,
sorry, I
on
missed
the
that.
fly,
My
on the
bad.
fly. Because when you're doing it in your prep ahead of time, well, you have time to work that out, you know. And
Right.
but when you create that encounter, even if you use your challenge rating there, maybe it didn't work out. You underestimated X, Y, Z, and you need to make an adjustment on the fly. So there are things that can be done, and that kind of comes with experience as to which of those four is going to suit you best in that particular combat situation.
Right.
Okay, I'll give you the last word before we call it a wrap.
The last word on combat encounters. I guess on the fly combat encounters. I've done it. I've definitely had a really great example of it. Again, that level 4 one shot that I had to dumb down to level 1 characters was my biggest learning curve. And now I'm kind of a little bit of a seasoned professional at dumbing down encounters. I guess I now have to work on the opposite because now I have a giant table, and I don't want combat to be easy for them. I want it to be difficult and challenging, and I want to keep them engaged. So learning the opposite on how to make it harder in more ways than just slog is definitely something that I am working on, and it's very exciting to dig into the nitty gritty on. I guess the mechanics of.
All right,
It's
and
always
on
fun,
that note,
fun to learn.
Julie, I'm going to stop our recording. Don't hang up with me yet, though, but I'm going to stop our recording, and we're going to say peace out to all those who might be watching about how to balance a combat on the fly.